Alpine Type X. I'll do a video later on this one. This is the Sundown ZV5. So, no holes in the shaft, Jacob? Come on, buddy. Come on, give me some holes in the shaft. Anyways, Type X. The frame is really deep, or it appears deep. It actually goes all the way down to the bottom of the. It encases the magnet. You can actually pull this magnet out. Yep, the 4 bolts, and then I think, what did I have to do? No, it's two. Is it 2 pieces? I forget. This comes out though. Oh yeah, you got to take out the modular ring, and that should be it. So let me take those out. Personally, I don't like the Type X because of this. It's basically a Faraday ring. It's also a heat sink. But it causes static buildup, and so sometimes you have to ground it. I think I've done videos on this before, but I'll show you what I do. This bolt pattern I think is pretty common. I think this might be I think it's a 145 if I remember right. I don't think it's 127, but we'll pull this apart and take a look at it. Yeah, it just plopped out, so you just dump it over. I have a couple of these frames if you're interested in them. Like if you have a broken one and you want to try to restore it, let me know. These will do 25 shipped each. Boing boing. This is what it looks like with the sub-assembly. It's got the boot on it, which is nice. Makes it look a little pretty. Plus it's branded, which is nice. And then we already got that off. We got to bang this off. It's just glued on there. I just gave it a little taparoo underneath and it popped off. So I'll include this with the, if I have them, with the frame, if you want it. So that's what it looks like. So I think it's a triple stack. Yep, it's really thin layers. Those are like 1/2 inch. Yeah, I would say, yeah, maybe 15 millimeter. So it's 45 millimeter total. Not quite 2 inch. So it's good for about 1100 watts, maybe 1200 watts as a 3 inch. This is the later version. This is the bigger gap version. There's a version that came out before that had a tighter top plate, and for those we use the 3 HP slim coil, which is what I'm going to use for these. The slim coil can work for either one, but if you specifically have the thicker one, sometimes we can get you a thicker one, and it just has better heat transfer. It's nicer. There's a little bit of what do you call it, jizz, crusty jizz on there. You want to get in there with some acetone, soaked on a paper towel, and then use a popsicle stick to get in there and clean the gap. So, but other than that, it's not impressive at all. This would be equal to about like a Scar EVL. Does that make sense? EVL, 3 inch coil, basically, 2 inches of magnet. Yeah, about 1200 watts. Let's see. Oh yeah, let's measure the bolt hole circle. One of the other numbers that's important in sending the gap dimensions is knowing the BHC, the bolt hole circle diameter. And basically what you do is you measure the two far apart from one another. Now most of these motors are made in China, and so you want to go center to center, or you can go left side of the bolt hole to the left side of the bolt hole. That's another way to do it. If you have calipers, that's the best way to do it. But most guys will just go center to center. You just kind of eyeball it. Most of the Chinese patterns will be, I don't want to say even, but they'll be like 160 or 165 or 150 or 155 in increments of 5 millimeter. Now, it's when it's, I don't want to say an American company, but like typically when they want to make it seem like JL, where all their stuff is made in China, but they want to make it seem like it's made in America, and so they'll use an American standard. Always convert to metric. So like on the, we figured out on the 13W7 that it's actually 161 millimeter. So whatever that comes out to as far as standard, it's probably like 6 3/4 or something like that, whatever it is. But just keep an eye out on that. And then of course this is standard hardware, which is M6. So that, but by telling me the bolt hole circle, it tells me what frames are available for it. Also knowing the side view and how tall this is tells me how tall we can go on the wind height. And I've been getting a lot of questions about how tall of a wind height can you get away with. And there's a lot of variables to that, so I don't want to get into it in this video. But basically you want to have it so that you can go full X-max of the coil, meaning all the way from the top all the way to the bottom without bottoming out. That's basically the key. If you can do that, then you're in pretty good shape. You can still bottom it out depending on how much voltage you apply to the woofer, but that's the idea that you want to keep. As far as float goes, the smallest shim that is in the industry is JL Audio, and it's not a good thing. And they cheat by using Kapton, which is a reinforced fiberglass formers, which even when they rub, they don't really make a noise, or they make very little noise. And so I don't recommend using a gap like that. I recommend using at least 0.5 millimeter, if not 3/4. The standard is 3/4, and then no larger than about 1 millimeter. Now, some of the standard coils out there, like Jacob uses on the SA Classic, it actually uses 3 business cards, which is 1.5 millimeter all the way around, so on each side. I don't agree with that, but you know, whatever. That's his way of doing it. It's nice and floppy sloppy. But basically, the closer proximity that you have, the better the heat transfer. That's one of the reasons why DD says that their subs are better. Do you get a little bit more BL? Yeah, but it's not really worth the risk of it being off slightly or sagging over time and then rubbing. So, and I see that a lot with a lot of DD subs, is they just kill themselves over time. Now I think DD does that because again, they're trying to be a premium company, and they want you to buy a new set of woofers every year or every 2 years. That's their business model. I don't like that, and so I like to have a little bit of gap. On the outside, I like to have 0.5 millimeter or more. Typically 1 millimeter is nice and safe, and then the inside gap, you want to have 1 millimeter to about 3/4 or even 0.5 millimeter as far as the shim goes. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks. So that last video or section of the video, I will be posting on its own on how to measure the BHC. This one happens to be 135. So that's actually pretty close to several others. And I have that on the new version 2 TI frames. So it makes it easy to transfer over to another frame. I think I'm going to try to use, the 12 spoke for him. Typically on the wider bolt hole circles, I like to use the tarantula frame, the T frame. It has a very wide base. The other one that's good for wide bases is the claw frame, which was used by DD. It was used by Sirwin Vega, and it's also sold by PSI. So that's another good one, but I'll find a good frame and then we'll get this together. Oh, another question that comes up, Patrick, why didn't you use the original frame? Because it sucks. It's not great. It's hard to work with the terminals all on one side. I also don't like, you guys know I don't like set screws. Those suck. The landing is not very large, and I've seen a lot of people fuck it up. And then on top of that, you need a really tall former because the frame is so deep, and it doesn't need to be that deep. This is like an EVL whatever motor 12. Just put a regular 12 spoke frame on there. If you want to put a little bit of a spacer on it, that's fine. It doesn't really need to be that tall. Now the 3 HP Slim are, I think, a full 6.5 inches tall with a 60 millimeter wind height, which is a little bit on the long side for a motor like this. But in the latest version of the SCAR EVL, they actually use a 60 millimeter wind height, but they use double spacers on it to kind of raise it up. You still may want to bias it a little bit. The more appropriate wind height on this should be anywhere from 40 millimeter up to 50 millimeter. That's it. But we can probably get away with 60 millimeter as long as you don't use a spider that's larger than 8 inches. Does that make sense? Because once you use a spider that's larger than 8 inches, now you can put the TI frame on here. In fact, you can put the version 2 TI frame from Lord of Bass on here because it has the 135 millimeter bolt hole circle. So you can just pop that on there. Now, as long as you use a 50 millimeter coil, which is kind of a waste to use on a 10-inch spider, but you can do it. So if you really want to spruce it up, and if somebody wants to, like the deluxe version of the Type X, that's one way that you can show them you can do the deluxe version of the Type X. You do have to make sure that your former height is pretty tall, and then you can get away with like the GONZO cone, which is the 6 series from Lord of Bass. Does that make sense? Mega Roll. So the 12 spoke's not going to work because the 127 millimeter bolt hole circle is right up against the base. This one is drilled out for 120 millimeter, which is compatible with some of the older Sundown SA Classic, and then it also has the 127 millimeter. So we need to get to 135. So I actually found a pair of VMAX Serwin Vega, which is good because I like to take these motors off and then use them as 10s. So I got a pair of those guys that I can pull off and use for this application. The only downside for this frame is that the spider landing is a little on the short side. I think it's like 7.5. And so what you do is you just use an 8-inch spider and then you trim it all the way to the roll, and then you just put down a bead of epoxy and then place the assembly in it, the coil assembly, after you've done the coil. Because I'm going to do the coils ahead of time for this guy, for Michael up in New York. And I'm going to do the bottom of the coils. So all he has to do is shim it up, which I'll give him a shim, or I'll work it out, and then I will also include some business cards, so that because the pole is going to be, the pole should be the same. I don't know why they would modify the pole. They typically modify the top plate when you want to accommodate for a larger gap, just because your manufacturing over in China has already tooled up for that pole size, for that coil and that shim and all that kind of stuff. And MTX ran into this problem too. MTX on the 9500, the older versions have a tighter gap. They're not better. That's why they changed it to a larger gap. And that's why that's what I find funny, that a lot of people do like DD, digital designs. It actually sucks though, and it's expensive. And if you want a good alternative to that, it used to be sound cubed or audio cubed, but even their stuff is getting expensive. So again, you got to look for somebody else like Recoil, Black Brick, who's that other one? Slaps, Resilient Sounds, somebody like that. That's an up-and-coming company, and they're just buying Alibaba stuff and then just importing it. So if you can use a jig, which is what I'm going to use a jig. So luckily for me, on the Vatu Supreme parts that we did, that cost me over $5,000, we got the 127 bolt hole circle, 135 and 145. So what this is also good for is this one uses the standard 127, so I can put it on here, bolt it up from the back, and then use these holes to add the pattern that I want. See how that works? So I can give you one of these for 20 bucks if you want to just buy the top plate. Oh wait, no, I can't. Never mind. We only have as many as what we need for the T-yokes. So I found this the other day. Crusty little penis-shaped. See? See, Jacob? Even DD vents their poles. Why can't you vent your pole? See? So, but yeah, so that's a little bit of a cheat. The other way to do it is take it to a machine shop and have them center it, clamp it down, and then they use an automated, basically like a CNC, what is it? Mill. So they put it on a mill, and then they say do 6 position at 135 millimeter, and it'll go beep, 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 and it'll do that. Sorry, that was Mr. Wah from Texas Boombox. They're gonna start using the truck again, which is what I like, because otherwise I have to order a whole pallet or 2 pallets worth of fucking boxes. I don't need all that shit. So hopefully I'll be able to get some boxes cheap enough here that we can move a bunch of these 12-inch woofers out. So I wanted to show you this. This is basically what I did. I went in and then I came back. I think it's with the 3/16 is what, you don't want to fuck up the threads too much. You can always go back and tap the threads. So, but now the 135 bolt hole circle is on there, and then what you want to do is go back and just enlarge it to whatever size you need. We're going to be using M6, so I think we go to like 1/4 inch, something like that. But let me large in the holes, and then we'll do a fit test. So I went back and just did a little. I bored them out to, I think, what is it? Yeah, 1/4 inch, and I think it's something 64ths. That's just slightly smaller than 1/4 inch that I use. And then I chamfered them, very crude countersink, so that we can use the flathead hardware. And then let's go ahead and put it on. Ooh, look at that. Look at that. It's lining up. So there we go. Good job, Patrick. So here it is. He's going to have the chance, if he wants to rattle can, remove the terminals and then rattle can the frame any color he wants. So in the past I've chosen glossy red, which is always nice. But as you can see, it's just a standard, 1200 watt motor. So this spider is fine. I wouldn't go any smaller than this, but that's where it's probably the minimum. So I've reconed this before. Used to use those terminals, the eyelets, before I had other stuff. So let me trim up the spider and show you guys. So this is the standard spider that you see from like lower to base. And when you trim this to the very base, it fits right in there. It sits about right there. And you can either, what I do is I put down a bead of epoxy first. You can do CA as well. And so then you have it shimmed up, you have it already attached to the coil, and then you set the whole thing in there, and then you go back and do a bead on top. And just lay a bead down and then let it sit overnight, and that should be fine. Of course, you want to use one with leads. So here's a couple of different ones that I use. This is the one that we had exaggerated. They just didn't trim it as much. So that way we can use it on the 10-inch TI frames. It's 8.5. And then this is our regular version. So, and we get these in, I think it's 2 5/8. And then we neck them out a little bit for the 3-inch. They're nice and soft. I really like them. I've made lots of successful woofers with them. Oh, that was a good one. All right, this is the final wrap-up video. So we ended up using some new Mexican coils, copper coils. I went ahead and trimmed the OD, or actually Ash did. And then we used the claw frame. So, and there's the shims. I'm actually going to include the shims for him to do a recone kit. And then you can change out the terminals if you want. I think I'm sending this frame to him as well. And then you basically just shim it up, terminate it, and then here, let me put it on there real quick. So when you're putting it on here, you want to put down a bead. You can just put on a bead of CA. You can also do epoxy, like JB Weld or something like that. Oh, see, I got to trim it a little bit more. Probably trim that little tab off so that it fits in the groove. It's good that I did the dry fit. So, but basically we take care of that, and then there'll be a little edge, and then you can come back either with CA or epoxy. That's why when you grind this, you want to grind it kind of all the way up here on that wall. I don't know if you can see that on this wall. So that way you can get maximum grab when you're adding the CA. This frame with a 3-inch opening does fit the GONZO cone, so I'm going to go ahead and include the GONZO cone, which is like a free upgrade because he's been very patient. Thank you, Michael. Just because, like I knew I could do it, but it just took me a little bit longer. I had to wait for the coils. I thought we had coils, but we didn't. So let me get you the gap dimensions real quick, and then we'll get you out of here. I'm going to go ahead and put this together. The gap dimensions on the most recent version of the Type X is the ID is 74.3 millimeter, and then the OD is 87 millimeter. So ideally you want to use about an 85 millimeter OD coil. The closest thing I have right now is probably this one, which is the Phi knockoff. It's an 8-layer bifiliar flat aluminum. This one is dual half ohm, and as you can see, it's still a little gappy in there, but it's good enough. So this one I'm using is a 50 millimeter wine height, all copper. It has a OD of, what did we say, 82 millimeter. So it's a little gappy, but I'm hoping that the copper will add a little more thermal mass, and then also this heat sink that's in there that will add some. Technically, you shouldn't ever get your woofer so hot that it gets up to 500F and dissolves the glue that holds the top plate onto the magnet, but some people do, and I just try to avoid it. It's one of those things that it's just part of the business of being in speakers, and as a manufacturer, designer, whatever I am, you just try to avoid it. That's all. The real responsibility lies on the end user, on how they use it. So if you abuse it, it's going to get hot. The end. Let's see, what else? Okay, so I'm going to include some, these guys. This is an M6 by 12 flathead. It's stainless, which kind of helps. Oh, it's a little magnetic-y. Well, it is Chinese stainless, so. But that should be perfect because I countersunk the holes on the frame, as you can see there. And I think we said, what was it, 135 millimeter both hole circle. And let's see, so he's going to get the 2 coil assemblies, the 2 frames. Oh, also on this claw frame, just be aware that the gasket is a little oversized. I think Lord of Bass sells a version. You can use it on this one, but I forget which one it's meant for. Some of the new, I think the UA frame, which is Lord of Bass, but it's ultra audio is what they called it. But it's the like the Gonzo Grinch. That one is slightly oversized as well. I should have a stash. I think it's up here of the gaskets. Nope, those are American Bass. I usually keep them on one of these corners. Yep, they're up there. So, right there. But it's just a little oversized than the regular TC Sounds one, so just keep that in mind. Also, I think the cutout is like 1/8 of an inch slightly larger for the claw frame, so just be aware of that as well. I will also include some new terminals for him, and then that way he can keep the old ones as like spares. Trying to think if there's any other information. The standard thread on the terminals is M4, metric 4 millimeter. And then he's getting the Gonzo cones, which I should have. Yeah, they're over here. I laid them out. So I cut them out I necked them out for 3-inch, and then that's what's he's gonna get. I think he did. Yeah, we're gonna do caps. So I'm gonna do 150 millimeter carbon fiber, and then I'm also going to include a pair of paper inner caps that he can seal in place with some epoxy. I'll include some Devil's Jizz for him as well. I think that's it. Is that it? We'll find out. But that's it. That's the Type X. That's my conversion. And that's the latest version of that. So that I just figured out that we could use the Gonzo cone, even though it's really deep. It looks fantastic with it, and it should bring a lot of value, especially when Alpine fans, you know, those parts aren't, Alpine doesn't make those parts available, so you just got to do the best you can with what's available in the market. And I think that's a good alternative for that. So I love you guys. Thank you.